And welcome to another episode of Loosely Scripted. I'm your host, Bach. Thank you guys so much for joining us. If you've never caught the show before, Loosely Scripted takes a background look into the world of esports through the eyes of the people involved. People like myself and people, of course, like my guests. The most important part of the show, there is no rules and there is no script. So we can say and do whatever we want, and that's the beauty of it. This week's guest, given all the hype around Valorant, I thought it was perfectly apropos to bring him on board. Probably one of the best Valorant players in North America, if not the best Valorant North American player. But if you don't believe me, we have a quick video before we introduce him so you guys can get a little taste of who I'm talking about. Let's take a peek.
I can't see if they run up cat.
Did he just drone through the smoke? Is that what I
They're
heard?
droning mid.
Fairly certain they are running.
Is he like here?
They
Cat.
can't be a cat. They can be.
He's got to be like in the smoke
One
then,
is
right?
bottom mid right
He's
here.
somewhere close.
There's one mid.
Let me get the ace real quick. Where is this guy?
Oh,
Wow.
Oh, fuck.
Grass dead.
One more.
They know I'm here.
Like mid.
Mid dead.
That's
Up
it.
down.
I
That's
got west
guys,
side.
B.
West side.
Okay.
Yeah.
They smoked. Color
Hey,
smoked
I'm
off.
smoked off right now.
Don't,
Okay.
Taylor, find him.
Alright. He could flank me garage.
Jamie, push.
Fuck.
You can do half
Hit
of
him
your
for
ult.
60.
That or half.
You have to utility. Get across to the right side.
God.
Got him.
So, as you saw in the video, it was none other than TSM's drone. Let's bring him into the show. Taylor, thank you so much for joining me for this week's show.
Hey, what's up?
Wow, so talkative already. It's wonderful. So, looking at your journey throughout the world of esports, you've started in Counter-Strike, you transitioned over to Valorant. How has that gone for you outside of the obvious? Obviously, you pick up a big org right off the bat. You're one of the first teams in North America signed. You're winning pretty much every event you guys play in, with some exception. You're largely touted as the best team in North America. What's it like to go from struggling and fighting for opportunities in CS to now being one of the best in the world in Valorant?
Yeah, in terms of like just general support and recognition, it's a bit different because like I made a tweet about this actually the other day about how in CS, like most of what I got, if I got any interaction at all, was like negative, like people calling me bad or trash or other words I probably can't say on stream or on
You
broadcast.
can say them all you want.
Oh well, I'd rather not repeat them. But then switching to Valorant, I think my Twitter following's grown 10 times what it was or something. I started at 3,000. I'm at 20,000, I think, right now. My Twitch has gone crazy. I'm at 40,000 followers there, 1,000 subs. So it's just like the overall reaction and like just the support system behind me is just inflated crazily, and it's just really nice.
When you guys first started playing in beta, did you think like, okay, this is really gonna this is gonna work? Like, at what point did that roster come together? Whose idea was it? How did it all just like click so quickly? Because it felt like you guys got a jump start. Like you guys were well ahead of the pack at the early stages during beta competition. So, was there like a plan for a while, or how did that all kind of happen?
It wasn't a plan per se. It was more of a spontaneous thing. So actually, at the time, Wardell and Sabrosa were still playing in some CS events. And it was kind of the brainchild of our coach Taylor. He came to me and I told him, I was like, I'm really having fun in Valorant. I might switch, you know. And me and Cutler and Hayes were already talking about making a roster together. And then Taylor at the time was working with Sabrosa and Wardell on the Orglis team in CS. And he's like, yeah, they were expressing interest as well. So let's see if we can, you know, make that work, or at least give it a try and see how you guys mesh. And so we played together for like a quick couple tournaments. We won them like not even close. We all really enjoyed playing with each other. So it kind of just went from there. Kept playing, kept winning, and then org offers came, and then we officially made the switch, and it's been up from there.
You mentioned that org offers came in. How long did that take? Because given like how hype Valorant was right off the bat, everyone knew that they were coming, and it was just a matter of time. I knew that they were coming because I've been trying to get you on the show for so long, and you were like,
Yeah.
"Hold on, we've got some big news coming. We gotta wait. I can't say anything, but you're gonna like it." And it was like, "Dude, just." And then obviously, finally, you guys announced that you were signed, but. I mean, how quickly was it, and how aggressive were these orgs? I imagine TSM wasn't the only one that came knocking, nor do I imagine it was the first. I'd imagine you guys had your fair share of offers come in very quickly, right off the bat.
Yeah. So once the process got started, it was pretty quick actually, but it went from the best way to is 0 to 100 like immediately. So
Hmm.
there was like very little interest. There was like sparing interest like here and there, some orgs, some tier 2 orgs like expressing interest, and all of a sudden, I don't know why all of a sudden, but it was like a number of orgs reached out to us and they were like, "We want to sign you. We want to get started. We want to go." And obviously TSM was one of them. You mentioned them not being the first. They were among the first.
Mm.
And so obviously when TSM reaches out to you, you're like, wow, that's a name, right? That's a
Yeah.
brand. That's something we can get behind. So obviously just from that, just the name power, the name TSM, we kind of drew to them off the bat. But obviously you want to take other things into account, like how well they treat their players and all that. So after some time, I wouldn't say it take longer than like 2 weeks or something. And then yeah, we signed, we committed with TSM and got started.
I mean, it's obvious that an org like TSM has some serious prestige behind the name. One of the ways they get that is by taking care of the people who are under the brand.
Oh yeah.
You don't get to that position in esports by being some flaky, like take advantage of players, don't pay. That doesn't happen. Those orgs get taken down quickly, or sometimes they manage to linger on for a lot longer denial than you would expect them to.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, TSM. It's like you hear that name and you just think like, okay, this is huge. That's right up there with organizations like Cloud9. There's just so much value behind that brand, and they're going to take care of you, and that you're going to grow just being a part of TSM. Like, even if
Right.
the team's success dwindles, like, you're going to get huge exposure to a massive audience through TSM. Like you mentioned, you're growing on social media and on Twitch. Part of that might be TSM because they have a loyal fan base. Part of that's obviously just because of how well you guys are playing as well. But do you feel like you guys made the right choice? I would assume you did. Like, I mean, everything seems to be working out for you guys with TSM. Do you regret at all? Is there any point at which you're like, man, sometimes I watch CS and I think, oh, I kind of miss it a little bit.
No, not at all. I haven't opened the game since. It's a bit of an anticlimactic answer. I know you're expecting me. Oh, it was my first game, and I'm always have a place in my heart, and it does. To a degree, it was my first esports experience. I grew a lot as a person individually, just like learning things, and it gave me a lot of life experience just overall, not just Counter-Strike. I learned a lot about how to be professional and how to be a person and an adult through CS. But no, like everything since the Switch has been up. Everything's been good. I watch CS just because I like CS and I can appreciate it for the same reason I appreciate Valorant and its intricacies in terms of like how deep the game goes.
Yeah, of
But
course.
yeah, no, I watch. I haven't. I'll show you right now. I will check right now live when the last time I even opened Counter-Strike was. Hang on. It is July 27th was the last time I even opened the game, and that was the deathmatch because Valorant was down and I couldn't play Valorant. So literally since the beta of Valorant kicked off, completely off Counter-Strike. And no, never. TSM's treated us fantastically, better than I've ever been treated in any org in the past. I'm sitting in a very comfortable chair, courtesy of them.
Oh yeah, the Herman Miller. How is
Herman
that
Miller
chair?
Logitech. It's very nice. I'm very comfortable. It's the way I try to describe it to people, and it doesn't always work. Is like it doesn't feel like you're sitting. Like you normally when you stand up, I don't know. I know you're up in years, so maybe you get it. When you stand up, you're not that old, man. I'm sorry. When you stand up, your back, you can feel it doesn't hurt, but you feel like like it's nice. You have to stretch. I stand up and I'm fine. I don't. It's nice. It's really good.
That's awesome. I mean, the truth is, you guys get just a ton of perks just being a part of TSM. Things that are probably TBD and haven't even been announced yet. Things that are coming down the pipeline, obviously put on pause because of the current coronavirus situation. Do you feel like that's actually helped you a little bit? Because, coronavirus kind of made the landscape for professional Valorant a little bit different than maybe it would have been had there been a LAN environment or had there been some structure involved with Riot. Do you feel like it kind of opened up doors that maybe would have been shut otherwise?
I think the only thing that I can imagine it made too much of an impact on is actually the viewership and the reception of the game. Obviously, no one is happy that there's a pandemic and it's awful and terrible things.
Of course.
But like in terms of just like everyone's inside now and everyone's playing more video games and everyone's watching more Twitch and everyone, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So when Valorant releases, you have all these people at home looking for something to do. New game comes out, let's try it. So in terms of that and just the reception of the game, I think maybe it played a role in speeding things along a little bit. But like for me personally, it hasn't. I mean, I'm a gamer and I've been a gamer for like 4 years as a profession, so I just sit inside and play games anyway.
I mean,
It
I
is.
can attest to that. I've seen
Yeah.
you just destroy people in any video game. I think we played Rocket League like years ago,
Yes, I'm
and
very good
you
at
were
Rocket League. I'll
ridiculously good. It wasn't even fair. Like the game just came out, and I'm like,
yeah.
okay, how do I like? I'm like trying to figure out how to do like the boost front flip. Like I literally just installed the game, and you're like, oh, see ya, and you're just flying through the sky like.
Yeah, I love that game. It's such a cool time kill. Some people are insane. I'm not as good. I don't play as much anymore, but yeah. No, I'm just like I'm used to sitting inside, man. I like going out with friends, and that sucks that I haven't been able to go hang out and socialize and do what I do, but
Yeah.
temporary for I hope.
Now, let's say this didn't work out. Where at all, like esports at all, was just a dead end for you. Going back to your CS:GO roots, obviously you fought for opportunities there. I watched you on the come up. You took some bumps and bruises. You spent maybe a little bit longer in the semi-pro area than you really would have wanted to, but you eventually did get your shot. Even though it didn't work out to the highest degree, you still got to play pro Counter-Strike, even if the teams didn't really work out to the fullest. What if that never happened? What would your plan have been? Because you got into it so young that it's not like somebody who's like, oh, I'm 20 and I'm like in college and I decided to drop out to start pursuing esports. You were
Right.
before that, so like you didn't have a chance to really like focus on what you might have been able to do. Like if esports was plan B, what was plan A?
Plan A was just like I'm really like into computers in terms of networking and security and kind of thing. I went to school. I went to a high school that wasn't I don't know what the word for it is. It's technical high school, like a vocational high school,
Mm-hmm.
where you get your diploma, but you also get like and I took like 3 or 4 years of like hardware, computer maintenance, and like computer networking, security, and that kind of thing. Green energy. I'm certified in like green energy technology. I was certified, I think, for a bit in mechatronics, a little bit of that. That was, but yeah, that kind of stuff. That was my career path before esports, and esports kind of came along as like it wasn't. I didn't like I want to go pro esports, right? I didn't like think that. I played Counter Strike. I was good at Counter Strike. It kind of happened because I played a lot of Counter Strike, and then teams were like, "Hey, you should start playing with us." And then I started, I think, in IM in 1.6, and then CS:GO came out, and I tried out for like a premier team in Go, played main a little bit, and then got picked up for a premier team, made pro, and eventually it just became a thing, right? Like I remember the first day I told my mom, I was like, it was with Splice, and Splice wanted to relocate us to LA, like just in the outside of LA. And I came to my mom, was like, yeah, I'm gonna move to LA in 2 weeks. And I was like 18, and she's like, what? And I was like, yeah, they want me to move to LA, and I want to go. She's like, okay. And at this point, I hadn't lived on my own. I hadn't done any of that. I was 18. I was like just got out of high school, and she was like, bit of an adaptation for her. But ever since then, it's just been my life, and I haven't had, thankfully, to really consider what I'm gonna do. I mean, obviously, that's my number one choice. If it wasn't this, it'd be what I was talking about earlier. I have a passion for that, and I'm really interested in it. But hopefully, I can do this for a long time.
I mean, we'll touch on one of the things you just said there, but let's say Valorant didn't work out. Let's say you decided to start playing Valorant and it didn't work out. Would you have stuck with CS, or do you think you would have maybe bowed out? I know that
No,
towards
yeah,
the
I would've
tail end of
retired, yeah.
CS, it was looking a little bit rocky for you there. You had a second research. I would guess it's not really a resurgence, but you had a second opportunity when the whole Envy roster came around, which
Right.
is when you were playing with Cutler towards the tail end of his career as well, and it just did not work. The project just kind of fell flat on its
Yeah.
face for whatever reason. We're not going to get into the details there because there might be some nitty gritty and stuff you don't want to share. But ultimately, that project just didn't really come together the way you expected. And just looking, after that, it was like kind of just like goofing around, semi-pro teams, pug teams. Were you losing your love for CS? And you're saying you would have just retired? You wouldn't have tried to focus on something else or
Yeah.
transition to coaching? You would have just been done?
No, I was done. At the tail end of CS, there, I kind of got a little bit of the joy back playing with Bug Gods with Android and Hiko.
Mm.
And we weren't like solid or anything. We were just playing in an event and playing well. I was playing well, but I think the experience you mentioned before with the Envy project and all that going not occurring. I'm not gonna say not according to plan. It just kind of burned. Like it didn't go very well at all. Crashed and burned. And a lot of the nitty gritty that you were saying we won't get into kind of killed my like it wasn't enjoying, like it wasn't fun for me anymore. It wasn't about like right now in Valorant, I love competing, I love playing, even if it's like losing sucks, but man, I'm getting to compete at this new game in this new exciting space, and I'm innovating and I'm watching the growth of something that's like awesome. In CS, that wasn't there. It was just like things kind of felt almost like a chore. There was no the heart was going away, and if Valorant didn't work out or something, I think I was done with esports. Yeah, I was throwing the idea around before Valorant came out, and then I was like, oh, I'll give this game a shot. I'll try it. Riot, obviously a big name, probably gonna make a good game. So, and then
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that worked out pretty well for me.
Well, I mean, you look at your team in general, and I see a bunch of players who probably were in a similar position to you. I think the one that really stands out the most to me is Sabrosa.
Yeah.
Sabrosa got, in my mind, got screwed. The tail end of his CS
hmm
career should have been kind of the exclamation point on his career. Like, this is the high point. He gets signed to Cloud9. It's a massive opportunity. Even if it was not necessarily a permanent solution, if he was a temporary solution, it didn't matter. He was brought into the team, and then he gets there, and the team is DOA. The team just never really gets into a competitive mode. Things were falling apart behind the scenes. It's already been publicly shared that the team was kind of just in a state of disarray, and the whole Gen G deal started to take place. And I kind of like felt for him. It felt like he had this opportunity dangled in front of him, which is basically esports, in my opinion, to a T. Is the dangling carrot constantly being dropped in front of your face, and you're like, oh, I almost got it, and you just keep reaching for it, and it's just you're never quite grabbing it, and sometimes you get your fingertips on it, and you feel like you've almost got it, and then the person's like, nope, and they yank it away. So I look at your team and I see players like him, or even players like Wardell, who, in my mind, Wardell got stuck on a dead end team. I thought Matt was incredibly skilled at CS, but when I see the passion he brings to this game compared to the player he was when he played CS, it's obvious there is a night and day difference. Anyone who knew him during his CS days knew he was like super timid, really quiet, not the one to necessarily like stand up and pop off on stage. In fact, I've seen the opposite, and you were at the event, the Aces ROG Masters. Your team was bullying him at the end of the desk row, and
Yeah.
you actually
Yeah.
got warned. Davey got warned that if he stood up
Yeah.
again, you guys would have to DQ the map. And he just sat there. It was not his MO at all. And now you see him like
Right.
flexing at the camera and screaming and popping off because that passion is back. So I love to see that instilled in guys like you and guys like Wardell and guys like Sabrosa as well. It's awesome. Now, jumping back just a bit, you mentioned when you were on Splice, you're 18 years old, and you tell your mom you're moving to LA. How have your parents been in general in regards to your push into esports? Have they been resistant, or have they been resistant at first and now they get it because it's real and they see the money coming in, they see the opportunity? Like, how's that been?
Um, I wouldn't say resistant. I'd say hesitant is a better word,
Mm.
specifically because when it happened quite quickly. Like I said, the whole thing. I just came out. I was like, hey, I remember the first time I got a contract. I was really excited. I was like, guys, I got a contract. Like they're gonna sign me. I'm gonna make money. They want to pay me to play the game. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And I was
Who
like,
was
I
that,
was
by the
making.
way?
What's that?
Who was that sent you your first contract?
Depends on what you mean by first contract.
What was
Like
the
money,
first?
like
Yeah, the first time you got actual money, not like a TeamSpeak server and the jersey.
would be Splice, yeah. Splice. And so I was like, they're gonna pay me money, man. And I'm like, I'm obviously making amateur CS salary. At that point, I had no idea what salary was, no idea how much just to make. And I was a kid that like didn't get much money. I was like, dude, this is so much money. I'm making so much money. And yeah, they're like, oh, that's very cool. And then when that came out, I was like, yeah, I'm moving to LA, by the way. They're like, whoa, wait, what? They're like, you're moving to LA to live with people you've never met before. It's like, yeah, but these are all really nice people. And here's the thing, you can talk to this person, and like, it took a little bit of convincing. And eventually they were like, okay, yeah, you can go. And I went, and she'd call me every day and whatever. I'd give her a video, I'd FaceTime her, show her the house, and eventually, that Splice ended, and then I came back home, transitioned eventually to Envy. Then I moved to Dallas. Now Envy's done, came back home again, and now TSM.
So they've actually been, they were supportive but concerned.
Right, yeah, because they don't obviously, and they know a lot more now. They know a lot more. They know a lot about like brand growth and competitive salaries and what people are doing and what people are making. And so the more it went on and the more they learned and saw and like actually saw viewer numbers and saw tournaments, they really are like supportive now. They're 100% behind me. They watch my games. A lot of my family, I'd say like all of my close family watches a lot of my games now. It's really cool.
Now, with your success in Valorant, have you talked to like any of your childhood friends, or has anyone in like that you like went to high school with or something ran into you? Because again, you're back home right now. You're living at home with the family. Given everything that's going on with COVID, that makes perfect sense. But like, if you were to go out to just go like get a sandwich or something, and there's a dude behind the counter that you went to high school with, he's like, is there a sense of recognition there? Like, oh, I saw you playing in that blank 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 event the other day, or has any one of your like childhood friends like kind of like, oh my God, I knew him when?
I've had two people that I went to high school with reach out to me that were like, "Oh, dude, I see you're playing pro." This was in Counter-Strike days, actually. I don't think it's happened from someone I know personally, just from Valorant, but from Counter-Strike, a couple people did. Yeah. And just recently, I went to how was it? No, my dad. He like wears my apparel out sometimes because I got him a jersey. He actually got himself a jersey with my tag on it. It's really cool. But he went to go to like the our favorite Mexican restaurant around here. He went to pick up food and he saw the jersey and was like, "Oh, the guy working there. He's like a younger kid. He's about my age, a little older maybe or younger." He saw the jersey. He was like, "I know that guy." And my dad was like, "Yeah, it's my son." And he's like, "Oh my god, bring him next time." So I went there. It was a couple weeks ago. And he jumps in my stream. He's a really nice guy. I said I met him. I said hi, shook his hand. Well, socially distanced. We said hi. We didn't actually shake hands, but yeah, it was really cool to be recognized like that.
So far, I've only been recognized one time, and I feel like
Yeah.
it doesn't count because I'm not a big personality. I'm just a small guy, and I'm not like a player. I was at ESL One New York across the street. We were getting French fries, so it doesn't really count because it was like a CS event. So
Okay.
like,
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
feel. There is, however, a Domino's delivery guy that knows that I work in esports because he's dropped stuff off in my office because I have a separate door, and he's
Right.
like, "Whoa, you have a lot of setup here," and I'm like, "Yeah," and he like sees my lights and my cameras and all the multiple PCs, and he goes, "Wait, are you like a streamer?" And I had to get into that awkward conversation. He's like, "Oh, that's dope." He's like, "I see the CLG jersey. That's so cool." And now, if
Right.
I ever order Domino's and that guy delivers, he's like, "How's everything going?" I'm like, part of me thinks it's cool, but part of me is also like, I don't like this is kind of a little weird. Like every time this guy remembers me that vividly. So either I
Yeah.
order pizza too much, or this guy just has a really good memory, or he is obsessed with me. So if I die,
I mean,
just-
it's not
just
like
wanna be
every
hey.
day you open, like if you're a pizza delivery guy, some guy opens his door and you see like 3 jerseys, a soundproof room, and like cameras and lights and stuff, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Oh, what's this about?" Like, I mean, I feel like that's enough to be memorable, right?
I feel like I could
And
have
then
made up
learning it's about
so many cooler things to say though.
like what though? Like,
I
what
don't
can you make up
know.
about? I mean, I'm pretty sure the evidence is literally behind you on the wall. What you do?
True. I could have. I don't know. I just feel I could have been like, "Oh no, I'm a vlogger and professional soccer player," and he would be like, "Really?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is my jersey from Barcelona."
But he knew who CLG was, right? He said, "I see
Yeah,
the CLG jersey."
yeah, that would have been a
Oh,
problem.
yeah, that's not gonna work. Yeah.
No, yeah, that wouldn't have worked out at all. Now, if if you continue to play Valorant, like obviously Valorant is blowing up for you right now. The success is unreal. Like watching you guys compete, you're clearly far and above a lot of the competition. I'd say there's close contenders or contenders. There you go. In the likes of Sentinels, I'd say Gen G gives you guys a run for your money every once in a while. T1 is obviously up there, sort of struggling, making some changes potentially. We won't get into that necessarily, but let's say you continue to play Valorant for a while. What is your
Okay.
end game goal? Do you want to just keep competing forever? Would you transition away if the game starts to fizzle? Do you want to become a coach? Do you want to get into background org management? Like you said, you had a proficiency and a desire to get into the technical side of computers. Would that be
Mhm.
something you'd want to do in esports? Because if you actually look at esports as a whole, most of the people kind of like me that work for esports orgs were players once. They played in other games and then they just worked into the background. Is that a goal for you? Do you want to do that? Or would you rather just stockpile your money and then retire and just do whatever you want?
I mean, to call it a goal to like not compete sounds weird because it's not. Like my goal right now, the only thing I'm focused on right now, and I think it kind of has to be this way, is like I want to win and I want to win everything,
Mm.
and I want to go to as many events as I can, and like I feel like this is just a start, right? I'm really excited for Valorant lands and traveling again and actually getting to meet people that are into Valorant, and like it's almost like, I mean, and you have an experience with this, building that sense of community, like with Counter-Strike, how it had you see all the people at the same lands and they're kind of like your group. You're
Mhm.
like, it's nice to see each other again, right? Because you live like all across the country or over borders, and like every time an event comes up, you get together and it's like kind of like a friend gathering of like
Yeah.
once every, twice every, three times every year. So like I'm really excited for that to happen in Valorant, like because we have pros from Overwatch that like our Counter Strike guys we're not going to know, or we have like Sinatra and like a lot of the Phase guys, and it's going to be nice to build that community back up again, like a fresh. Instead of seeing all the same faces like I did at Counter Strike lands, I'll see new people and get to interact with new people. So the goal I think right now is only that. Like I'm only focusing on like building what we have now. I'm not looking too much into the future, but if I had to say like if I couldn't be a player anymore or whatever happened, it'd be really nice to be able to do what I like in terms of like technical things, but inside of an esports environment. Yeah, I think that'd be like ideal for me.
I mean, that was where I thought I'd end up. Coming in
Right.
from IT, I thought, oh, perfectly natural for me to just like build computers or fix computers or run the network side. Like I still geek out at events. Like I'll look at we did an event through Nerd Street with Philadelphia Fusion, and I was looking at their desk setups, and I'm like seeing how they terminate wires and run all these things. And I won't necessarily get into the details, but like I'm looking, and I'm like, that is so cool. I never thought about doing that. And I'm like, like whose idea was this? I would like to talk to this person, and it's really easy for me to like geek out and nerd out on that stuff because I'm still fascinated by technology. I still read tech blogs on a regular basis. I still keep up to date on what's going on, even though I don't really deal with it at all, and it's all stuff that I can't afford on that caster budget. So now you mentioned a lot of names, a lot of people you potentially like to meet. You didn't mention one, Zoms. What's the deal with your team and Zoms? Like, so I know that Moses interviewed James and he said the beef is real, but like, is it real or is it just sort of fake, or is it maybe real but not necessarily as big a deal as everyone makes it out to be? Is it just between those two, or is there something bigger there? I know that Wardell and Shazam kind of don't get along perfectly, so I'm kind of curious what's going on here.
Yeah, I mean, people think that's like a manufactured beef. Is that like a thing? Like people think that tweet was planned?
Yeah, everyone thinks it's fake.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of people thought it was just like you guys goofing around and like secretly everyone's best buds and like, ha ha ha, look, everyone thinks it's real.
No, dude, we're in TeamSpeak, right? After we lose to Sentinels. And this is like, he tweeted this really quickly afterwards, and he had that interview, right, where he was like, oh God, what did he say? He's like, it was pretty condescending the way he said it. He was like, let me explain this to you or something. Like if one team never beats the other team, that kind of, you've seen it, right?
Yeah.
I don't even remember the wording. And we're just like, we just had some clown shit. Like we're on TeamSpeak, like, you see this shit? And Yassine's like, I'm gonna reply to him. So Yassine replies to him, and then we all, it's like, obviously this whole Twitter thing went off for like, and we didn't think anything like was gonna come of it. It was just gonna be like this spat on Twitter real quick, right? And then Yassine replied, and then we all left TeamSpeak, and we all did our own thing after that. And you lose, do what you do. And then like I just see the chain going and Yassine's still going, and Zoms is going back, and Yassine's going back. So like it wasn't manufactured. That was completely like real. And there was like definitely like the things they were saying weren't like planned or whatever. And yeah, Shazam and Wardell don't have. I think they have beef. I know they're not on good terms. I don't know specifically what that's about, but I know they don't like each other.
Oh, that's an odd thing.
And the thing is like when we play each other too, and it's a factor. Like no one likes losing, but it's like I especially don't want to lose to those guys. Like I don't want to lose, but especially not to those guys, kind of thing. And I'm sure they feel the same way about us. It's like we really want to beat these guys, so we play like the best we can possibly play. And I think Moses maybe was the one that said this. That was like we bring out the best in each other in terms of when we play each other. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah, we bring out the best in each team because we so desperately want to beat each other.
Yeah, as long as the rivalry stays healthy and it's not like it doesn't actually get to the point of like really wanting to hurt each other, and it stays like server-based, game-based, then yeah, I think it's great. I guess in this instance they'd be like Team Iceland. You guys are the Mighty Ducks, and yeah, that's a reference.
That's a reference. Wow, you're dating yourself.
Hold on.
No, I've seen it.
Actually, if anything, you guys wearing the black and white, I mean, that's Team Iceland's colors. So I think that makes you the bad guys.
Do you enjoy making people think you're a boomer when you...
Yeah, I mean, I am a boomer, so what am I supposed to do? I can't hide the dad jokes or the references. They're always going to be there. Looking at your team, you obviously didn't find the success overnight. It wasn't like somebody just flipped a switch and you were the best team in North America, or potentially even the world, which a lot of people are saying, and we'll get to that in just a bit as well. What is the practice regimen like for a team like TSM? How are you guys practicing? And also, how are you guys incorporating your coach? Because right now the game isn't really designed to allow coaches, and I know that teams aren't super keen on having that spectator slot taken by a coach because of the obvious factor that they could see everything.
Right. So our practice regimen, like I just finished practice like right before I hopped on this interview with you. I remember we organized that. I finished practice at 11 p.m. Eastern. We started about 4 o'clock Eastern, so it's pretty long days. And we practice every day but Friday, Saturday. And that turns out to be a Friday, Saturday too, because tournaments run Friday, Saturday every time. So they run tournaments. So we're like playing basically every day for a lot of time a day. And yeah, the coaching thing with Taylor, exactly what you just said. Like obviously some teams aren't keen on having people inspect, but like we have a mutual understanding and agreement where like we'll say to each other before the game starts, hey, no recording. If you're in your spectator slot, don't record, don't do anything, don't do anything shady that you wouldn't want us to do to you. And some teams are cool with it, some teams are fine. Like, we have good relationships with some scrim partners that we're cool with them having their coach in the server, and they're cool with us having ours. And some teams, they say no. And then in that situation, we have one of our players individually stream our POV to our coach, so he can sit and watch and still do his job.
So he's still able to have input and still able to kind of watch what's going on, but not necessarily can't see anything you wouldn't want him to see. I mean,
and the disadvantage of watching the POV of one player is he can't switch between us and see what we're all doing at the same time. So
I hope that's something that's coming, to be honest, because I feel like that's a massive hindrance right now for the competitive scene is the lack of a coaching spot. And I'd say in general the spectating client is in need of work. But, I mean, that's more of a problem that I have to deal with, less of a problem that you guys have to deal with. Because when you're in game, it doesn't really matter so much. I mean, if the spectator client is what it is now, it's good enough that you guys can make do. Looking at your European counterparts, there's one team that constantly gets brought up for obvious reasons. They're the only big team right now currently competing in Europe. Obviously, other brands have come on board, but they haven't necessarily matched the same level of success. Looking at teams like NIP and more recently, Fun Plus Phoenix. It's G2.
Liquid.
Oh, yeah, Liquid. I wasn't even thinking. I forgot completely about the Fish123 signing by Liquid. Yeah, But G2 is the team that's constantly brought up. Everyone talks about how G2 is the best team in Europe. Potentially, they could be the best team in the world. I think the ultimate ironic ending for this storyline would be for you guys to go to LAN and then get your asses beat by a Korean team that no one ever heard of. But do you feel like if you had a chance to play G2 right now, you would confidently take the series?
Yeah, I'm not even worried about it.
How bad would it be? 2-0, 2-1, blowout maps?
I think it'd be 2-0. I don't think they'd be blowout maps. I'm gonna say it would be 2-0 and it'd be 13-7 for both maps, like around there.
So not like
what I like about the
blowout.
G2 is specifically the owner. He tweets a lot, man.
Oh, Ocelot?
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
and
Carlos.
I'm it's like a healthy kind of like competition kind of thing, like kind of like what Sentinels has with us. And they're almost like the European Sentinels for us right now. We're like, man, you talk a lot, but let's play. Let's play. I know some of the dude. One time, this is sorted now because I think Artist said something actually really like we respect each other as competitors. Like, I think all the guys on G2 are really good. G2 thinks we're all really good, but both of us think we could beat each other. We're confident. I think it was Artist that one of the times he gave an interview after one of his events, kind of like what we're doing now, but it was a post game thing. And he goes, this one stuck with me. He goes, yeah, I think TSM is held back by Hazed and Cutler, and who else is on that team? Like Relics or something. And I was like, oh, like he didn't even know I was on the team. He didn't know it was me. He knew it was Matt. He knew it was Wardell, Sabrosa, Cutler, Hazed, and then he's like, Relics. And I'm like, oh,
dang.
And then he tweeted something the other day, really nice actually. Really, he's a cool dude. He tweeted like, what was it? He thinks I'm like one of the most well-rounded players in A, or the most well-rounded, or something really good. So at least he knows who I am now. That's cool. But I'd like to play them to cement that memory a little bit. You know what I mean?
I mean, not to inflate your ego, but I'd be inclined to agree. I've seen you play multiple roles.
You are inflating my ego, Paul.
Yeah, right. I've seen you play more of like an entry role when you're playing the Phoenix, and now you've gone back to your Sova, which is what you played more in the beta. Which when you started playing the Phoenix, I was kind of like, oh man, I miss his Sova darts, because you were one of the first people I saw with the double dart towards U-Haul on Bind.
I stole that actually.
You're the first person I saw actually get a kill. I've seen other people do it, but no one ever gets a kill like that. So you were the first person I saw just get the timing right, and it actually got caught on stream. I think that was in Frag Social Distance. That was like really early on in the beta. So I was like, oh wow, that was really cool. And just watching some of those lineups in general, I was like, okay, now I can kind of see like some of the value and flexibility that Sova has. And it's been interesting watching the meta develop with him too, as an agent. You see people maybe not necessarily using shock dart as much to do damage, but maybe taking out tripwires or equipment a little bit more. But it's been a little bit of a back and forth with you, and in general, TSM has changed agent roles a lot. You guys have probably been the most fluid team that I've watched when it comes to agent compositions and the agents that you guys bring into play. I've even questioned it when you guys had a little bit of, I don't want to say struggle, but you had a few events that didn't turn out the way you maybe would have wanted. In the events immediately following, you had like vastly different agent compositions. Is that the work of your coach, or is that something that goes on at a player level where you guys are like, I think one of the reasons we're not doing that well is because I just don't like playing as blank, or I don't want to do this anymore because it's boring. You know, we've seen Cutler switch to Omen at times, playing the anchor role, still playing the anchor role, but playing it as Omen, like on Split. We've seen you guys abandon Sage more aggressively than every other team currently does. We've seen you juggle roles around where now Sabrosa is playing on the Phoenix and not so much on the Brim anymore. Where did that come from? Was that you guys? Was it Taylor? Was it somebody else?
It's primarily a coach thing, secondarily a player thing. So obviously it works in tandem where the coach will say, I think we could try a new comp I've seen work and I think it would be really good. And the players give their input. Obviously, if someone's really against it or really doesn't want to do it, he's not going to force us to do something, you know, use a comp that we don't want to play or we don't feel comfortable playing. But we're all really open, which is what's cool in this team is we're all not, none of us are like, I'm like even Matt, dude, Wardell, everyone's like one trick threat, stupid, all per dumb, right? Like no, Matt is like totally willing to play other agents. We just like we're like Matt, you should play Jet. You're really good at Jet. You're really good at shooting people with the op, and you're really good at Jet. like that's why I'm Sova right now. Partly is because Jet. I don't know if you remember, but Wardell would play Sova on some maps.
Yeah.
He would flex Jet Sova,
Unbind.
and we're like, dude, you're so good at Jet, and I was like, I really like Sova too. And you see, I'm sure can play Phoenix, so like let's just like, you know what I mean? I'll pick up the Sova roles when you're supposed to be playing Sova. You stay on Jet all the maps, that kind of thing. But it was my decision. The only time, because you mentioned it's like I really don't like playing this guy. I used to play Breach for like a little bit. Probably don't remember it, but I played Breach, and I was like, I hate this guy. I would flash people, and they'd turn my flash and kill. I'm like, this guy sucks. I'm like, his flashes are bad. I'm like, I want to play this Phoenix guy. No one can turn this guy's flashes. And then I did, and it worked pretty well. So, but yeah, no, it's mostly a coach thing. Players give input, obviously. As long as no one's super against it, we'll try it. But the only time, like going off of Breach to Phoenix was totally my thing. I hated Breach.
I mean, to be
I
fair,
think I see more value in his kit now, but at the time, I was just like, this guy's flashes suck. I keep
yeah,
dying.
but you actually see a lot of teams shying away from Breach. Breach was like standard 5-man
Yeah.
meta in early stages during beta. Actually, for like the first 2 weeks, no one ran Breach. I remember having conversations with players during events in chat, and they were like, Breach sucks. He is trash. His kit is terrible. And then like 2 days later, every team ran Breach. It was like
Yeah.
the standard 5-man competitive rotation was to have Breach in there. But Breach's kit is like incredibly it's not self-serving at all. Like
No, not
whereas
at
like a Phoenix you can entry off your own flash. I feel like like Breach's flash is more aimed at being like a way to flash in a teammate.
Yeah.
And I feel like his flash is really good when you pair it with another one. So you'll see teams use Breach now like on Ascent and they'll do like a dual flash. Maybe it'll be Omen or maybe it'll be a Phoenix or maybe it'll be both. We've seen teams run that triple flash setup where they run all three, and they have like this crazy capability as a result. But it's kind of been interesting to watch the agent composition change and like the fluidity of the meta. And you guys are always at the forefront of that, which is why I wanted to ask. Now, you speak about your teammates too. 2 teammates in particular catch a lot of heat constantly because they don't necessarily have glamorous roles. Hayes plays primary support, and Cutler is your anchor. Why don't you explain why everyone in Twitch chat is big dumb and keeps talking trash to our man Cutler? He's bald, I'm bald. Come on, give some love to the bald people.
So the best way I can the best example I can give, right? And there's like it's pretty irrefutable is like, okay, I can't even tell you what specific map it was, but it was like a very important match. It might have been even a Fran finals or an upper bracket finals. We were playing some team where like it scores like 10-11, 10-10, very, very fragile economy around. Like, you know, the loser of this round is in rough shape for the rest, right? I believe it was Hazed who 1v4'd and won the round. If Hayes doesn't win that round, none of us, he was 1v4. Not me, not Matt, not Sabrosa, did any of that. It was 1v4. He won the 1v4, won the round, and we lose that game if James isn't on our team. We lose the game. That's the kind of thing that he brings, and it's consistent. Like, he will win those kinds of rounds a lot. And he's also very good at, like, using his support utility, and he knows what to do, how to, like, set other people up for success. And it's like, yeah, he's like every team, there's 5 people on a team. One person has to be at the bottom, right? There's going to be a bottom. There's going to be someone second up. Like and just people like to hate on the guy that's on the bottom for some reason.
Yeah, they like to see it as a weak spot, thinking like, oh, if we replace this guy, everyone's going to be really good, and they're all going to have 20 kills. I'm like, no, that's not going to happen, because realistically, someone has to suffer.
Yeah, and Cutler does that kind of stuff too. He'll clutch rounds that we shouldn't win, and that like, so like you're having a rough game, right? And the morale for the team is kind of low, and you're like, we're losing these rounds, and we're feeling like we're getting shut out, not what to do. And then James or Cut win one of these crazy rounds. We're like, oh, okay, like it gets hype. We're like, yeah, let's go, dude, and we're gonna.
Yeah.
And then we just start rolling, and everyone starts hitting their shots, and everyone's communicating more because these guys like they bring back that energy. Like they don't, you know what I mean? They have that experience and that composure to be like, okay, let's win this. And that's how you saw a lot of our comebacks come from things like that. Like the Phase Ignition Grand Finals 8-12, I think, on Bind where we won.
Mm-hmm.
It was another one of those situations where we're like, I was looking bad. We were down 12-8. We really didn't have much of an answer, and everyone just kind of like, okay, let's just do it. Like, let's take it round by round. And primarily, like James was like a voice of like, we can still get this. Yusin's also really good with that. He's an IGL. I was like, this isn't over. And then everyone starts just like making their plays and communicating, and we're working as a team, and we run it back, right? And that kind of thing you don't get from just anybody. So
I think there's a massive misunderstanding too when it comes to the role that Cutler plays. Cutler's your anchor, like that's his job. And as
Mhm.
someone who plays that role, everyone always says, "Oh, the anchor is always on the bottom of the scoreboard because it's the quickest one to sink." The reality is, you're in a glamourless position where you're likely to get pushed by multiple people or rotate away from the site where you set up all your utility and your kit, or move
Mhm.
through your utility to slow them down.
Yeah.
So that you could keep that site from being taken. So, like, I play Cypher. I know that Cutler plays Cypher on a lot of maps, or at least he used to, and now he's switching more to Omen at times, which has also been interesting to watch. But, like, I throw my cyber cages down. They're down. They don't come back up. And sometimes
Mhm.
I don't have time to go back and get my tripwires, or sometimes a Raze throws a blast pack and takes it out, or it gets shock darted, or my cam's down because it got blown up too off an aggressive peek with the camera, or whatever the case may be. Now I have to rotate across the map with no utility. And even if I
Right.
had it, it's like useless to me in a retake. Like Cybercage
Mhm.
has some usability, camera is like situational, but for the most part, the kit is not designed to be aggressive. That's why Cypher on attack sucks balls. I hate playing
Right.
Cypher on attack. So I think that people just have this massive misinterpretation of what his job is, and I think the same could be said for Hayes as well. Hayes will have some pretty strong performances. We saw it during the Phase Invitational. He had that one game as Brim on Haven where he just like popped off. He was like 19-4 or something crazy like that. But you still see those glimmers, those flashes, those rounds where like, wow, that's that's Cutler. Everyone's like saying how he's terrible and he's the worst player and he deserves to get Cutlered off the team. Like they meme about it in chat, but then you realize, okay, no, he's still very much capable of doing it. It's just people don't understand. And I would almost love to see someone like educate the community, because as much as like a caster we get hated on by chat, people be like, oh, iron casters, silver casters, whatever, the majority of the people watching are not high level players. Maybe they don't even play
Right.
at all. They might just be fans of watching. So I like almost really wish like there was a video that played every time someone said that and we could just trigger it and then just like play on the side and it was like, oh, this is the anchor role.
Yeah. I mean, in the case of Cutler specifically, you have to picture yourself as Cutler, where he gets put on a bomb site and he puts up his camera, his tripwires, his cages, and he just sits there on his camera the whole round.
Yep.
And either he either has to hold a site pretty much alone against like 3 ults, 8 dudes, a jet flying in the sky with a shotgun, and like all this crazy stuff. Or the other site gets taken and he has to run and retake a site against 4 ults, 8 dudes with no utility. Like it sucks either way for him. So it's like pretty a thankless role, but someone does it and he does it well. So someone has to do it and he does it well, rather.
Now, looking at the current agent composition, Killjoy is becoming kind of a pain in the ass to play
Yeah.
against. It's a great tool to have on your side. Are you guys already experimenting with Killjoy compositions, or do you not want to
Yeah.
give anything away? Because I'm looking at a guy like Cutler, and I'm like, man, I'm imagining him salivating a little bit because as great as Cypher can be and as good as the two combined could be, her kit is just way easier to use compared to Cypher.
Yeah, it's a bit more dynamic too. You can like in terms of like utility, like you said, with Cypher, you have to set up your tripwires, and they're all defensive. Like everything he has is
Yeah.
defensive. But Killjoy has those mollies, the stupid mollies that are.
Oh, they're broken.
I won't get into it, right? But you can use those offensively. You can clear angles. You can like throw on a bomb to stop a defuse, that kind of thing. And yeah, Cutler, we're experimenting. I can say that. I'm not gonna like. I think that's obvious. Like Cutler's gonna be the one that plays her, and he's really good at that role, and he's enjoying himself. Salivating was a good word when he heard about that agent.
Is it gonna change any of your other comps? Do you think? Like, do you think that you guys will go like multi-sentinel, like go with a Killjoy and a Cypher? Do you think that that's something we'll see? Maybe not necessarily from you guys, but from other teams.
I think the way the meta will develop and should develop is in the way that you have multiple comps that you can run, and depending on the team's playstyle that you're against or what your game plan is specifically for the map or the game, you change comps. You want to have I'd say like 3 or 4 comps you're confident in that you've practiced quite a bit that you can pull out at any time. Because okay, for example, against Sentinels, sorry. I was playing Breach on Split for a long time, and the gameplay style of Sentinels when you play them is they don't let you. It's very uncomfortable to play them. They're very like in your face. Like they're retakes. They're not retakes. They're a guy jumps and swings out of heaven. Another guy jumps out of heaven. Another guy's running at you. You know what I mean? Like you're like, holy shit, these guys are like not stopping.
Yeah.
And it works. It catches people off. So like Breach, like you said, is not a self. He's not a playmaker. Breach is like, okay, guys, everyone sit rack ready. I'm gonna ult the site. We go in together. I'm gonna stun this line. I'm gonna flash for you here. It's hard to do that when some guy's jumping out of heaven with a shotgun at you. You know what I mean? Like, you're like, what am I gonna do? I'm Breach. I'm gonna stun this. What? Like, you know what I mean? So I made the switch. I was like, I'm gonna play Phoenix on Split against these guys because like that way I can like at least make micro plays with my flashes and my wall and stuff like that, where I become way more impactful as a player, right? And so things like that, where you change up your comp varying depending on who you're playing, and this play style of the team, I think is going to be the meta, and I think that's what should happen. Yeah.
As a player looking at the game right now, what do you think is like one of the biggest things holding it back? Because
Holding it, the spectator system for sure, without a doubt. The UI.
so
Because I watch it, dude. I play the game professionally, and I watch VOD, and I'm confused. I don't
mm,
get it. Like there's like so like the silhouettes of people through walls. Like who's red and who's blue? Like are red enemies for who you're watching, or are red always the attacking team?
no, it changes. That's what makes things really complicated.
That's
And
what I'm
it's-
saying. I don't get it. I don't
It
understand
used
what's
to
happening.
be that red was always attack and green was always defense, but then they changed it because the spectator UI is exactly what you see when you play. It's the same client, so like there's no difference. That's why there's always bugs. Like, and it's still bugged right now. I think where when the teams swap at halftime, the score is backwards on the scoreboard. It used to
Mhm.
be bugged where every round showed as attacker round. Like, there's been so many bugs with the spectator client that make it really difficult to watch. But how about as a player, not as a spectator, like not looking at it from an observing point of view? Obviously, being able to like watch your demos or being able to watch back VODs and understand at the very least, but demos would be way better. Being able to actually
Yeah,
watch the game
absolutely.
inside the game. What do you think though is like something that you would want to see added to the game like immediately to improve the competitive experience?
Maps, more maps.
Yeah.
There's only 4. There needs to be more. We're having BO5s, and there's only 4 maps.
Mm-hmm.
So there needs to be more maps, and I understand maps don't come overnight. Like it takes time. So that's I think what they should work on. More agents would be nice, but I don't think that's necessary as much as it is more maps, because there's so much you can do with an agent and so many different plays. And like the thing is with like maps, they're all standalone. So you have 4 maps, and those maps are their own package. They don't interact with each other. But agents have like cohesion between agents. Like you can use double flash, like you said, or double sentinel, or like all this crazy stuff that you can like still. People are still now like months later experimenting with different agent cohesions and comps. So like more agents isn't necessarily like it needs to be right now, but I feel like more maps should be the in terms of competitive integrity, or not integrity, but like progression. Maps is obviously the number one thing. And balance, a little bit of balance changes, but I think everything's pretty okay right now in terms of that.
How many maps would you want ideally?
I'm biased because I came from CS, so like 7 or 8.
So would you want more than that and then have a rotation, kind of like CS, where we have maps that aren't currently in competitive rotation, or would you just rather have like, hey, here's the 7 maps that we have, or the 9 maps, because you want to have an odd number for the purposes of doing
Right.
pick bands and having random generators and all that stuff. Would you want to have a larger map pool and less maps in the rotation, or a smaller map pool and that's just what you get?
I think maybe a larger map pool with a rotation would be good. I just because that's not something I'd be used to, because that wasn't a CS thing. But I think that would be better. It'd keep people fresh. It'd keep things moving, right? So I think maybe that, yeah.
How would you
A
feel
larger
though
pool.
once the competitive meta changes because more agents get introduced? Let's say in a year from now there's 30 agents. Like, do you feel like the game is going to be a little bit more complicated and maybe not as enjoyable at that point because of the fact that the meta is so fluid, or do you still feel like you'll see the same static setups from most teams?
Well, things won't be static. Things will be definitely fluid with more agents like 30. I think introducing a pick ban system for agents would be really cool, kind of like how similar to League is.
Yeah.
And that would add a whole layer of depth to the entire thing. Like, because now you talk about comps, you talk about banning comps, you talk about banning agents against certain teams, that kind of thing. And that brings in another huge part of like a coach's role into a game like this, where like composition and pick bans are like this whole other beast that you have to tackle and like really delve into. But I like the idea of like having a large pool of agents where like there's enough similar, like, okay, so Killjoy and Cypher are similar enough in this fact that like, you know what I mean? They're both like very defensive agents, like traps.
Yeah.
They're not like flashbangs. They're like, you set this up here and it'll do this for you, right? So like, I don't think it'll go crazy. Like they can't even. There's like that many things you could do in an FPS game. Like there's flashes, there's smokes, there's like traps and stuff. But like enough like small variations between a bunch of characters like that, I think would keep things fluid. Yeah, and I'd really enjoy that. I think.
Now, have you guys had any communication with Riot at all as, big players in the North American scene? Do you have the ability to provide feedback to Riot based on the game? Have you had internal conversations? Obviously, I don't want you to share if you can't, but have you had the ability to at least just provide feedback? Because that's one thing that, Valve, I think, failed to do for a long time in regards to CS, was listen to player feedback. And when they finally started to, it felt like they didn't really listen. They were just kind of lending an ear to shut everyone up. Do you have that sort of direct line communication with Riot?
Just to vaguely answer your question, yeah, we've had an opportunity to provide feedback.
Okay.
It's not like I can call up you know what I mean? I can't call up like Volcano and be like, "Yo, Sal, fix this map." Like I can't do that.
Yeah, of course.
But like you, I don't know. So Morello, do you know who Morello is? He's the guy. He's like kind of head of like balancing the agents. He's like that kind of guy.
Okay.
He streams on Twitch and he'll do a thing right where in the start of his stream, he's really entertaining in general. But at the start of his stream, he'll set aside like an hour for everyone to come in and just ask him questions about Valorant, ask him about balance changes, tell give their opinions, and he listens. He reads the chat.
That's awesome.
And he'll be open. And like, yeah, it's not like the thing is you don't need to be a super secret like call Riot guy. Like you don't have to be like a top player in North America to get your voice heard. Like they're so good, and it's such a change of pace from Valve at like hearing the community's feedback. Like, have you seen their like dev blog posts? Like they'll do like technical like the Peaker's Advantage thing. They read the whole write up. Their technical team does a whole write up on Peaker's Advantage, or they'll be like, "Hey, we saw people talking about registration issues recently, and we did a deep dive into that, and here's everything we found transparently." That's so cool. That's so good. So it's like, yeah, they're definitely listening, and I'm just like so excited. That's like one of my favorite things about the game right now is the way they're handling the development. So like really huge ups to them.
There's a massive level of transparency that we never got in other first-person
I know,
shooters,
dude.
which is
I played Counter-Strike professionally for 2 years. I've talked to 0 Valve employees in my entire life. 0.
And you know what? The sad thing is that's the case for a lot of players, even at the high end. And when they did talk to them, no one was ever heard. They gave them their opinion, and they were like, yeah, sure, cool, sounds good. And then they just continued to operate in their own manner. And they gave us agent skins, and that was a great thing. Thanks a lot.
Like, imagine if Valve added the R8, and then we were like, ooh, we're going to disable the R8 because it's a bit broken.
Yeah.
Like what I did with Killjoy. They're like, oh, we added Killjoy, but we're not going to let her play in this phase ignition event. Like, that's so cool.
Oh, I mean, I remember
the immediate response was like, "This is a bit weird. It's kind of ruining some things. There are some things you really need to flush out before you make this competitive." And they listened and they were like, "Okay, she's not in the tournament."
Yeah, I mean, look at the AUG early on. Not when the AUG second time around got buffed again, and then they buffed the Krieg to match. I'm looking at like I think it was like 2015. They buffed the AUG and it was like a laser for like a week. Even though it only lasted a week, it felt like it was 7 days too long. Right after the patch came out, everyone was like, this is so dumb. And then there was the jump bug where you could literally self-boost into window on Mirage.
Dude.
Yeah. Like, stuff like that constantly happened. And it took way longer than we would have liked. Yeah, sure, the AUG and Krieg buff went untouched for a very long time. But it was largely like, hey, this is just how the meta is now, I guess. This is what they want. It didn't feel like it was like so incredibly game-breaking that it ruined the experience. It definitely wasn't as fun as it used to be. But there were other times where they legitimately broke the game, and it just stayed that way. So I do love the fact that Riot has more involvement in Valorant. And, you know, as someone who was involved in that tournament, to get that note like, hey, you know, we're disabling Killjoy, I was like, thank God. Because honestly, like, I kind of felt like Killjoy was just not in a good spot to be just thrown into competition, even though I don't think many teams would have run her. I really think that, for the most part, teams would have shied away. That would have been like oh man, we're playing against TSM in groups, and we're like the 4 seed, and this is going to suck. Let's run Killjoy and see what happens.
Yeah. Did I say Raze earlier, by the way, when I was talking about Killjoy? I think I would have said Raze.
You might have. I'm not sure.
Whatever.
That was another
thing
that
is
was
like,
broken at one point.
short of like the game basically literally breaking and like people, like in Valve, dude, you would have to like, God, what would get hotfixed? What would get hotfixed in CS:GO? Like if someone could like steal your items and like hack your computer by joining a server, maybe they'd hotfix it.
Yeah.
Like that day. In Riot, like, dude, Raze had a bug in one of the recent patches where, like, you might have seen it. Tens had a clip where she shot 2 ults, like she ulted but had another one right afterwards.
Yeah.
They disabled Raze for like the whole day immediately.
And then they disabled maps too. Like maps got pulled out of competitive rotation so quickly. They're like, hey, we noticed a bug, so we pulled it out. I'm like, okay,
That's
so
so cool.
now I'm
That's
like,
so good.
I can't play Haven and I can't play Raze. So like, not only is one map out, but one agent's out. I love that. I love the fact that they're at least willing to admit, like, hey, we screwed up. As a result, this is no longer available. Sorry, we'll
And I
fix it and
think
we'll let you know.
I think that's how you build a loyal fan base as well.
I
So
agree.
it's really cool.
And as one of those loyal fans and one of your loyal fans, I have one more question for you before I let you go. Will you sign my mousepad?
I will do that.
Oh, sick.
Please. First Valorant line, I'll buy you a drink. It's on your mousepad, I promise.
Oh, boy, I can't wait. Taylor, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. I know you had a long day with scrims and everything, but I appreciate you joining me on the show.
Appreciate you, man. Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Yeah. Well, guys, that's it for us for this month's episode of Loosely Scripted. We are live every month here on the Nerd Street Gamers Twitch. You can also catch the VOD over on our YouTube. You can follow us on all relevant social media, NERDST Gamers on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can also find our Twitch and YouTube at a similar location. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. We hope to see you next time.